Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and perhaps even good evening. Thank you so much for dropping by what I like to call the Donut Show. It's wonderful to see you all. We have a really full house, and I'm really delighted that those of you who could make it, who decided not to watch the Eurovision Song Contest or watch it in parallel to this, can be here. So nice to see you. There are 80 people watching right now, if my counter is correct, and that is a big crowd. So thank you so much for dropping by. I started a little poll earlier today, and just before the stream started, and I thought, how many people are watching the Eurovision Song Contest? We had 37 votes. And it looks like 81% of you are currently watching the Donut Show. That's great, that's great. And then 14% watching the Donut Show as well as the Eurovision Song Contest. And 5% are just watching the Eurovision Song Contest and they're not actually here, so not quite sure how they voted. But hey, it was a trick question that. So thank you so much for voting and participating in that. Today it's all about the 3D donut. And of course, Andrew Price has made a marvelous video series for many years that has shown us how to make the donut in Blender. And he's done that for an older version of Blender, and he's done it recently with a newer version of Blender. And it's a wonderful project that really makes you think outside the box. And recently I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could make all of that somehow with Daz tools and try to do it just with Daz tools. And I was more or less successful. And I thought I'm going to share this with you because I thought it was a really fun project, because it means you can think outside the box. Let me just go and show you a couple of things here. Donut stream, there it is. In here, I've got a few pictures to show you. So this was, I'm partial to this one because it is the first donut that I've made. This is basically donut version 1, and it looks kind of cool. So it has 3 different types of sprinkles. It has, you've guessed it, a torus primitive as the body, so for the dough, and then it has this magic icing. And I'll show you multiple times actually how to make that happen so that we can do that. Now this was only version 1, so there's many things that we can improve upon on this donut. I haven't made the dough, I haven't shaped the dough, so it's just like a very static donut, but we can go and, subtly squeeze it in, and not every donut needs to be round, so we can play with that. And then the sprinkles, you can have them straight as I have here. You can have tiny little cubes, that could be sugar. You could wiggle them around a bit so that they're kind of, little curves, so that makes them a little bit more, palatable. And you can have 1 color, no sprinkles. You can have 3 colors. You can have as many as you want. And I'll show you how to do all that. There's a few other things that I've made since then. So this was the donut promo that I've made for this stream. It has this 1 donut here on a plate, and everything sits on a table. And this is, can you just about see that? Yeah, these little sprinkles, they're now no longer straight, they're a bit wiggly, so that we can make that happen as well. And then some don't have sprinkles at all, some have just icing, some have multiple types of sprinkles. And the way I've lit this is just with 3 scenes. This is just a screenshot of the Daz working scene. We'll talk about that a little later. So torus primitive, on top of which sits this icing, which is done with something called the Materia MeshMaker by Alessandro. And that's a cool thing because it makes something. I always have to look that up because I can never remember what it is that it actually creates. It makes a polyhedron isosurface, and that is essentially a surface that looks at another object and creates something else on top of it. So that's what we're going to use for that. We're not going to use its snow shader that comes with it. It's kind of made for that. We're going to do that. We're going to essentially take all the bumpiness out of the snow. Then for the sprinkles, I'm using something called UltraScatter. This is the scene light for the setup. Here's the camera, and then we have 1 light that illuminates the first donut here. And we have 2 backlights that make it all look delicious, and we have a little depth of field, and we also have a material here on the box. And something else, yes, UltraScatter. So that's how we're going to make the sprinkles. So UltraScatter is by HowieFarkes. He used to be heavily into Carrara, if you remember Carrara, and he made these amazing nature scenes. And Carrara had this functionality built in. It's called a replicator, that you give it an object, any object will do, big, small, doesn't matter. And then you say, hey, replicator, I have a landscape here. Say you have a tree, that's your object, and then you have a landscape here, and I'd like to have 1,000 other trees randomly distributed along this surface. And then the replicator goes and does it, and that's how UltraScatter works. So Howie he made this himself. He wrote UltraScatter himself when he transitioned over to Daz Studio. and thought what Daz Studio is really lacking is this ultra super exciting replicator. So that's where UltraScatter comes in. We'll take one sprinkle and then we're going to tell the sprinkle with UltraScatter, hey, make me 500 of that on top of the icing, and rotate them randomly and position them randomly and all. That's where we get the sprinkles from. And if we do that 3 times, then we get 3 different color sprinkles. So there we go. And that's how we're going to make that. And the stretch goal today, I'm hoping I'm going to get through this, is I'm going to go and model this little donut box so that our donuts have a home. So the donuts are probably only going to take about half an hour, 45 minutes. Once I've explained it twice, and then we have a little bit of time, of course, for questions. And I thought as a nice stretch goal, it'd be nice to just model this box in Blender, so we get a little bit of modeling experience as well, that you get a bit of an overview of how you could make a prop, and then bring it into Daz Studio, and then we're rigging it up. So that's kind of, you know, advanced stuff there, what you need to set up so that you can at least have one bone that makes the lid, you know, open up and down. That's my plan. And, you know, we can always deviate from that plan. This is the UVs, we need to do that as well. And this is just a bit of Photoshop compositing. I'll add a small material then on the box if we get to it. But yes, that is the plan. My plan also was to add a bit of music here. I don't know if we can hear anything. Probably can't. Oh, because I haven't got there. Can we hear something now? Yeah, there we go. A little bit of music in the background. I thought that might be nice. Wonderful to see you all. Let's go get started with dissecting this donut here. This is my version 1 donut inside Daz Studio. And let me just go and show you what's necessary to make that happen before we create it from scratch. So donut with a shader on the bottom that is technically bread shader, but there is also these amazing food shaders from those things. They will work just well to make it, you know, look doughy. And then the rest is all down to really good lighting. So let me dissect this for you. This is a donut here. I switch the donut off. We're left with the icing. That just drips down through the donut, which is kind of cool. And the icing itself, that is made with the Materia. And on top of the icing, we have these UltraScatter nodes here. If I switch them off, then you can see that they essentially take one particle thing away. So it's this is one group of sprinkles, the blue sprinkles, and we have another one, that's the yellow ones, and these are the red ones. And these here are the original sprinkles. So these are literally just cylinders. But since they're now all instanced out, we can go and take them and, you know, bend them, swap out their shapes if we wanted to, change the color. So as an example, if I go and change the blue sprinkle here, if I go back to my donut, and bring the donut back as well. If I go, so these are instances, that means if I go and select my first sprinkle, head over to the surfaces tab, and then instead of blue, I might just turn that into another color, let's say green. Then you'll see that the color for all these sprinkles changes. And this is how we can get good variation into multiple donuts. There we go. Let us go and create all this from scratch now, and then I'll show you basically 2 variations of how we can make that work. I'll go and create myself a brand new scene, because I don't need to save that. And I'll start with the torus primitive, which will be the initial shape of our donut. So I'll create and head over to new primitive, and then we have the torus here. You can play with the values. I'm going to go and use these here. I'm going to start with 20 centimeters, and maybe that's the outer diameter of the donut, and then the minor diameter is how thick the dough is. So I might try something like 10, and then the segments and the sides, that's how much resolution our donut has. It doesn't have to be vast amounts. It could just be, you know, 24 and 12 works quite well. And then we have something like this. And I might just turn my filament draw options node down a little bit so that it's not quite burning out so much. There we go. Or even better, actually, I might go and switch this into the wire texture shaded view so that we can see the geometry of the donut. So the first thing that you might notice is that it doesn't quite look like a baked donut. Let me go and create another one. I'll just go delete this and I'll create another one with a slightly thinner diameter. So minor diameter, instead of 10, I'm going to say 5, and that looks like this. And if you've ever seen one of those donut machines cranking out donuts, then you'll know that this is how a donut actually starts. It's like a yeast-based mixture that is cut out like that, and then it needs to stay there for like 10-20 minutes to rise, and then it expands. So the outer, the like minor diameter, that would expand. And it's kind of difficult to figure out the exact dimensions and the exact look and feel of your donut. So Daz Studio has something that I thought I could show you while we're talking about this, because this is what it's all about, literally showing you all these little hidden features that you don't often use. And Daz Studio has something called a push modifier. And that is cool because it'll create something that lets you increase or decrease the geometry along its normals. So let me go and head over to edit here, object, geometry, and then there's this magic thing called the push modifier. So if you add that, I'll leave that on the screen there for a little bit, edit object geometry, add push modifier, then you get a little dialog box that opens up and that says, what would you want to call it? You can leave it at push modifier, but I might call it, I don't know, fatness, thickness, I might call that. And then look what happens to our donut. That's kind of nice. If you head over to your parameters tab with the donut selected, head over to mesh offset, and then you'll see my newly generated slider there. That's called thickness. So if I set that to 0, then my donut is back to what it was before. But if I increase that, then you'll see that along the normals, the geometries increase, and you can turn that into the perfect donut shape. So I'm thinking maybe this is what my donut might want to look like, at 3.5. But you can always you can change that. That's how to get the perfect donut shape. So if you don't have the correct, if you can't get the shape right from creating a primitive, have a look at the push modifier. That might be nice. We could at this point go ahead and shape the donut, bounce it around a bit. Doesn't have to be a perfect circle, but we'll leave that for the next playthrough. I say playthrough. Let's have a look at the icing. So the icing is created with this magic thing called Materia MeshMaker. Do I have the links here somewhere? I think I do. There we go, Materia MeshMaker. Then there's the food shaders, and then there's that. So Materia is made by Alessandro, and he's made that essentially to create snow in landscapes. And I thought, hey, that'll be perfect for icing on the donut, so we don't have to leave Daz Studio for that. This is what it's really designed for. It looks at an existing geometry and it puts other stuff on top of it. So like on the trees and on the mammoth there and on the landscape. And it works with parameters that are dependent on the size of the object. So hence I've chosen the parameters of the size of my donut in a particular way, because there's a little bug with this. Might have to tell Alessandro about this, and I'm sure he can fix it for us. So it depends which preset you use for this to work well with the size of the object that you've created. So for a large landscape, you'd need different parameters than you would need for a small donut. It's Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn. How exciting! With the hair and everything. There. And so you can tell this if you want to, how much of your object you want covered by a slope. So in our case, we have something round on the sides, and I could say go all the way to 90 degrees to the bottom, or stop slightly ahead of it, like 80, maybe 70, something like that. So let's have a look how this works. If I can remember, I believe it has a tab. Once you install it, you come up to Window, Panes, and there's something here called Materia MeshMaker. So that's a new tab that once you've installed it, this will come up. So this is not part of the of Daz Studio. That doesn't come for free. You have to buy the product for that to work. He does indeed, doesn't he, Wallace? He has a good video, so it's worth watching if you want to delve deeper into this. Here it is. It comes up with this pane, and I'm not going to dock it. I'm just going to go and move it over here so that we can go and close it down later. Let me go and switch this over to something that doesn't show the geometry. That doesn't show the what's it called? The wireframe. And I'll go and pick the shader is only real snow. That's the only thing we have. So I'm going to, from the preset here, I'm going to go and pick small animal. So keep in mind that my donut was 20 centimeters in diameter. That's kind of, it's a little larger than a real donut, but it kind of, works all right here. And that literally just creates that. And that's already the magic sauce of making our icing there. Feel free to play around with the parameters. So like here we have something called slope cover. If I wanted my icing to go further over the donut, I could make that maybe 100. And then it recalculates the surface. It's kind of magic stuff, really. I think that's just thinking outside the box. Is just so cool to think that. Look at that. So now we have something that makes the icing just much more. So it's, you know, there's this ton of icing in there now. And you can also go and increase and decrease the altitude cover. There's also, what was the other one? Volume points. That's another one you might want to play with. That's how dense the geometry is for the icing. So if I switch this back to this, I believe the volume points, if I turn this down to something like 500, then we calculate again, and then you'll see that the geometry gets less dense. So, you know, maybe icing not gone so right. So also possible to do that. It's also a bit thinner now, but there we go. So I think the slope cover, that was actually nice at 81. I think I like that. Or you can make it less. Let me make it less and show you what that does. So if you'd like icing that's only at the very top, then I'll set this to 60, and then we'll have just a thinner ring at the top there, like so. It doesn't quite leak down as much. And you can use any kind of combination you want with this. I might actually go and leave it like this. It doesn't have to be thicker than that. So it now becomes its own independent object. If I open my torus object, there's the Materia node, and while I'm here, I might as well just go and rename these things into what they really are. So the torus is now a donut, or let's actually call it the donut V1, and the Materia node, I'm going to call that the icing, just so you know that in 10 minutes time I can remember what I did there. It's amazing, isn't it? Absolutely. I thought when I explored that product, I was thinking, man, this would just work really well for icing. And in my previous example, I think the icing was a little bit too thick. So it being an independent object, you can now go and make that slimmer if you like. So you can go and make it thinner like so. If it pokes through the donut, doesn't really matter. You can just go and push it up a tad. So if it was a bit too thick, you know, we can change all that. And I'm thinking we're kind of good to rock here. That's a nice start. This I'm not too worried about. I mean, you can just increase all these points now if you're thinking, hey, maybe I'll go and would like perhaps 800 or so. You can do that. I'm going to go and leave it as it is and move on to the next part, because there's some other things before we get to the sprinkles. There's some adjustments that I'd like to make, specifically in the center here. So this is not really what icing would look like. I think it behaves great on the outside here. But where we see the slope, I think I'd like to expand that out a bit so that I get rid of this like, you know, this thick bit in the middle here. Also, what real donuts have is that the icing leaks down, and of course Materia can't incorporate that, you know, there might be an icing leak here and less of a leak there and so forth. So we need to have an external tool for that. And once again, like there is with 3D, there are so many ways to skin a cat. I'm going to show you two ways of doing it. The first one, I'll just close this down again because we don't need it anymore. The first one is going to be Hexagon. That's a free tool from Daz Studio, and that's a fully fledged 3D modeler. Let me go and save my scene here just because I can. I've made a folder on my desktop that's called the donut stream. In it I will make a folder called Daz scenes, and inside of which I'm going to go and save this as donut v1. Do you know what? Actually, I've changed my mind. I'm going to save this as a scene subset, and that'll make it easy to bring it into other scenes to compile it. So if I wanted to compile this later as part of a master scene, then this could be a part scene. So I'll say save as scene subset, and that lets me choose parts of what I'd like to save out in this scene. So let me do this donut stream dash scenes. I'm going to call this here donut v1. And now Daz Studio is going to ask me, well, what in your scene would you like to save out? I'd like to save the donut and the icing, but not my filament draw options node and not my render setting. So they're not going to be saved, which is just what I want. Let's go hit accept. And then let's style the icing with Hexagon. Nate, Glad you're here, glad you're here. I totally forgot to introduce my moderators today. There's Nate, of course, Dragonate, aka the Dragonate. There's also Julia V1. She's looking after Facebook. Nate's looking after Twitch. And Mr. Brian, aka Zero Calvin, he's looking after YouTube. Thank you so much, guys, that you can help me with this once again. I really appreciate that. You'd like to save it on your fridge. Very cool, Wallace. Let me go and show you send to Hexagon. So with the object you'd like to change here, send to Hexagon. This is one way of doing it. There's so many things. You can also bring it into Blender, change it there. You can also use the mesh grabber for that. We'll look into that a little bit later. And Hexagon is kind of my, for me, it's one of the go-to things I'd like to use for simple changes like this. I should have really changed the color of my icing so that I see this a little bit better. Let me do that. Close Hexagon down again, just so that we have a little bit of better visible separation here. I'll go to the icing, to the surfaces tab, just so that we can see this a little bit better for presentation purposes. Oh, the icing also, yeah, that's fine. Under base, I'm going to go and change the base color to something, I don't know, maybe a strong pink. We're going to probably change that into something less aggressive a little bit later. Less aggressive there. Still pink, yet less aggressive. Okay, with the donut selected, file sent to Hexagon. And what I like about Hexagon is that it's so well integrated with Daz Studio. It's just so easy to make a change like this. I was kind of hoping we could see the pink here. Sometimes it shows it, sometimes it doesn't, so one of those things. Down here, bottom right, I have both the donut and the icing available for editing. So I will click the icing here, and then up here I have my object selection mode, and I can then switch into what Blender would know as edit mode. So this is for faces, this is for edges, and this is for vertices or for points. I'm going to use points here. And when I do that, I can go and pick myself a vertex that I'd like to drag down together with the rest of the icing. So maybe this one here. Just one's fine. Oh yeah, just a quick navigational overview. Alt left click in the viewport, rotates around the object. Then scrolling the mouse wheel zooms in wherever the mouse is positioned. So if I position that here and I zoom in, then this is the part that's being expanded. If I position the mouse over here, then that's the part that's being expanded. Kind of greatly confused me in the beginning. And then Alt right click will pan the object around. So we'll pick a vertex, and I'm going to go and pull this kind of down and out with this little triangle here. When I do that, literally only the one vertex is being acknowledged, and that's not really what I want right now. So Control Z will undo that. Hexagon has this thing called a soft selection, and that's over here on the right. If I enable that, then you see that multiple vertices turn red. Can you see that here when I switch it on and off? And these are all the vertices that are being influenced as I pull this single one. So this is probably a bit too much. So I'll go and change my soft selection from 3 to something less. I'm really only here to drag this one part down. And I might do this in multiple takes. So the first one, I'll just go and make it slightly coarse. I'll go around here. And then we'll go and fine tune it a little bit later. Maybe have this one here, left click and drag. Down and out. Make it a little bumpy. And then this here, that doesn't look great. And if you followed Andrew's series on how to do this in Blender, there's a really cool way in which you can literally just grab the bottom part of all the vertices and then let Blender extrude that in something in a way that is random. And that's how you grab multiple vertices at the time. But I don't think Hexagon has that. If it does, I don't know about it. Really take your time with this. It doesn't have to be a rush job. And I'll do this in two in 2 takes, because one is kind of the coarser, larger leaks, and then the next one is going to be smaller leaks. So I have a different selection radius for that. Oops. Dude. Difficult to select something if it's not actually there. There we go. That's kind of the icing leaks. So this is a little bit of a catastrophe here. Let's go and get rid of that. There, so that's kind of the first part of the leak. And I'll have another crack at that. But it looks all right still. It looks nice. So let me go and try this again. I can try faces this time. So let me try faces instead of vertices. See what happens now. And let me go and make the soft selection a little bit smaller here. Take as much time with this as you want and as you need. There's one other thing I wanted to just quickly bring to your attention, and that is the way the manipulator points right now. So if I select a face like this one here, then it looks like the manipulator doesn't face up. It kind of faces kind of, you know, up and to the right here. But if I pick one slightly further here, then it points more towards me, and if I pick one on here, then it kind of points down. If we look at the blue axis here for now, this kind of points up, this one seems to point over there, this one seems to point towards my direction, and that is done with this thing here, the manipulator initialization mode. You can set that to selection or to world or to bounding box. So each of these has its own value, I'd say. World would be no matter what I select, the manipulator always stands in the same position. But that doesn't really help me adjust my icing. So I like it on the selection, and then it changes it to wherever the normals are pointing. That's kind of more what I need here. And then these little white bits here, they manipulate it in both directions, so into 2 axes. So like this one would be, I push it up a little. There, something like that. Okay, icing outer edge sorted. This one looks a little bit like, you know, it could do with work. Just pull that out a bit. There. Now let's take care of the inside here. So with the inside, I'm going to go back to my vertex selection, and I'm going to go and select multiple points here. So you can either go and look at it from straight from the top, or just, you know, just eyeball it like I will do kind of from the bottom here, I'm thinking. And to select multiple points in Hexagon, there's 2 ways. One is the lasso selection, arbitrary lasso, and one is the rectangular selection. And that's how you select it. This is rectangular, this is lasso, and you right click and select stuff. So that's a little bit unintuitive. If you click this and you right click and drag, anything that ends up in the selection will be selected on the object that you have selected. So in this case, the donut isn't selected, just this part of the outer icing here. So in my case, this looks like a perfect job for the polygonal lasso selection. And I'm just going to go and grab a few of these. Like so. You can go around multiple times to add more points to the selection. And this looks like I've forgotten a few up here. Doesn't have to be super precise thanks to the soft selection. So make that a little bit larger, soft selection, like so. And then, thanks to my manipulator being all on the inside here, I think actually now it'll be time to switch it over to the world rotation. And then I'll use my box in the middle here to basically push it all to the outside. Left click and drag this box, and then you'll see how the middle part of the icing changes. And it'll be dependent on what the soft selection is set, so that the icing looks a little bit better on the inside here. Yeah, so left click and drag, and then you can see what happens here. But it happens in 3 dimensions, so kind of nice. Happy with the inside. I think we could also make the icing leak on the inside. Don't know how much we're gonna see. Yes, absolutely, Tux. Absolutely, I agree. There's so many hidden bits and pieces that you see in Hexagon. And the thing is, so why I like it for these types of operations, so I wouldn't want to model something from scratch in Hexagon. I wouldn't want to do that because A, I'm not a very good modeler, and B, because I think that might just be a little bit too, that might be a bit too much. I mean, Hexagon has all the tools, or has many tools, but often Blender has more elegant tools for that. And what really makes Hexagon shine, though, and this is why I prefer to use it for these types of things, is the integration with Daz Studio. That is really where the whole magic comes in. That is one reason why I like ZBrush, not because I'm crazy about the interface, but because the way this integrates with Daz Studio, this one-click export, make a change, one-click export back into Daz Studio as a morph, that is really where the magic lies. It can be bumpy. You get the picture. Make it leak as much or as little as you like, and also make it look irregular if you like. You can shape the dough the same way. So I could have exported my dough from the beginning, the torus primitive, and just made that, shape that in Hexagon to make it a little bit less less uniform. Are we good here? This is maybe a little bit thick here. I'm thinking this icing leak might just be a bit thick. Let me thin that out a tad. Nope. A little bit more on the selection. There we go. Same with this. I think that's just a bit too thick here. There, and that. You get the picture. You could spend hours on just making the icing look good. So I really liked how Andrew did this in Blender, where he just goes plonk, clonk, there you go, icing leak. That was nice, but hey, it's all Daz tools, so that's cool. Once we're finished here, I want to bring the change of my icing back into Daz Studio, and this is really where Hexagon, whoops, totally shines. What did I do? I selected off it, sorry. Shouldn't have done that, that's cool. I'll go under to File, Send to Daz Studio. And because the geometry stays intact, I'm being offered a dialog here that says, hey, what would you like to do? Import it as a morph or several other things. Create a prop if you've made something from scratch. I want to use a morph, that's correct. The only change I habitually make is under here, under reverse deformations. And it's not necessary in this case because we do have a base pose here. So we haven't moved the object, we haven't made any changes to the object. But if you work with characters and you're changing clothing with Hexagon, which is super easy, then you're probably gonna, you're not ever, in 99% of cases, you're not dealing with the unmorphed Genesis figure, unmorphed, unposed figure. So if there is a custom character dialed in, if there is a pose dialed in, you have to change this here from reverse deformations no to yes, and then you're golden. So if you change it to yes now, even though we don't have that, doesn't really matter. But I say change it to yes pretty much all the time, unless you have good reason not to. So once you do that, it says created morph successfully, which is awesome. And now if I select my icing here and head over to my parameters tab, under morphs, I have my Hexagon morph here. And if I go and left click and drag that, I now have the same change that I've made in Hexagon. Is that cool or what? I love it. I can even go back. Well, that looks crazy. So maybe I don't want the user to go back with this. So I'm going to go and click on this little gear icon, head over to parameter settings and rename that. So Hexagon morph, it's probably going to be icing leak is a more descriptive morph. Name is what's used under the hood, whereas icing leak on the label is what we're going to see in this parameter. I also would rather this didn't go to -100, so I'm going to change this limit to 0 and maybe change the max to 200. See what that looks like. Hit accept, And that now has my icing leak from 0 to 200 looks terrible. I'm going to lock that in at 100 as well, because I don't want the user to go over it and then, you know, create an unsatisfactory result. Let's go back in here. Parameter settings. Max is 0. Sorry, max is 100. And you can also set the default value. So if you want the default value to be 50% or 100%, you can do that. Hit accept. I let us dial this in manually. And that's the icing sorted out. So that's not bad. Loving my donut already. Brent, what a cool idea. This is the kind of thing that I'd like to instill in you. Try all these crazy things out. Grab a Genesis figure and put a D-Force modifier on there and see them melt into a crazy monster. Why not try it out? D-Force as icing. That is a really cool idea. That is a very, very cool idea. Yes, you can. Wallace, absolutely. You can animate these morph sliders. That's absolutely possible. If you're ever looking for them in the timeline, make sure that you're set, that this here under types is set to other. So other needs to be part of it, because otherwise you don't see it. I think the default is just TRS. And if you do that on the icing and you open up the icing under properties, you don't get to see that morph slider right now. But if you go and change this over to other, then you will see the morphs. And in there is your hexagon morph, and there's your icing leak. So you can go and animate this from, you know, non-leaky to leaky. So you can do that. Just to see the keyframes here, just make sure this is set to other. And then you can animate icing leak. Looking forward to seeing it already. Do send us your best donuts and post them on social media, and add the hashtag Daz Donut to it. Please do, because that is just so cool. Dynamic surface to that. I'm not sure if that's a good idea, because dynamic surface, that has something to do with D-Force, and if I understood Brent correctly, it didn't work out so well. So I'll stick with the manual method for now. Let me go and save this out again. Save as scene subset. It's still really donut v1, so I'll just go and oversave that. And let's talk about the sprinkles. So the sprinkles, that's another super exciting feature that we get with this other tool called UltraScatter. So UltraScatter, currently on sale, is available in 2 versions. There's UltraScatter and there's UltraScatterPro. This is meant for throwing all kinds of plants onto landscapes. But of course, it being a fully fledged replicator, it is easy on the memory, and it can deal literally with anything. So it can deal with replicating one plant object along a surface, and it can even leave things like this, like the path, out. So you can give it a distribution shader that says clump these things together here, but not here. Leave that path out, for example, and then therefore there's no plants being replicated on the path. Thankfully, we don't need that, but we can make it happen. Surfaces are one thing, but you can also scatter into objects as well. So you can have it as a three-dimensional matrix, so that works as well. It's a little bit of a weird one to wrap your head around how a replicator works, but it'll all become clear once you play around with it. And we're going to do something like this now, essentially with tiny little particles that will sit on top of the icing. Here, this is that distribution and slope shader. So those are the options that we have. Very cool. Then you can add this noise here. So anything that is white will not replicate things. Anything that's black will replicate things. So kind of cool. We won't need it here, but know that these things are available. And yeah, there we go. This is attraction, and attraction with fall off and repel with fall off. Very crazy stuff. So huge respect for all these creators who come up with ideas that seemingly kind of overcome limitations of Daz Studio and just go, no, my plugin will do that. You go, how do you do that? That's crazy. Like, just on this note here, Alessandro, his latest product, that is something super crazy, totally unrelated. It's this one here, Mesh to Volume. If you haven't heard of that, it's we were talking about VDBs in a previous stream. You can turn any OBJ object, any solid object, into a VDB volume and back. You can turn a VDB into an object. It's crazy stuff. So those are the kinds of brains at work at some of the PA. So wow, kind of crazy good. I'm loving that. That is like UltraScatter. Yoshi, I don't actually know, to be really honest. There might be one, but I don't think I'm familiar with it. Let's start with the regular sprinkle here. I'll go and create myself a new primitive. And this time, it could be as simple as a cube. That could be like, you know, a sugar cube. But I might go make it a sprinkle. So I'll use a cylinder here. And I'd like for it to lay flat on the ground. So in that case, I'm not going to say Y positive. I'm going to say Z positive. And this, the size and dimensions, I don't really know. I'm going to say 5 centimeters wide and 1 centimeter tall. We'll see what that's like. It doesn't really need any geometry. I'll go and close these things down. There we go. That's it. I don't know if that's maybe a bit too big in relation to the donut. It could be. I'm going to go and move it off the side here a little bit, so that it's not in the center of the donut, just in case we want to frame that up in that part. I'll just go and move it over to the side. What's the donut look like in comparison to that? Difficult to see, isn't it? Very difficult to see. But there's one thing that I'd like to improve right away on my particle, and we'll see if it's too big or too small. The replicator will be able to help us with that. I'd like to make sure that the origin point of the object is kind of at the bottom center of the cylinder, because otherwise we're going to run into issues. So that's the first thing I'm going to fix here. I'll switch this over to look directly from the front. Control F to zoom in on my selected object here. And first of all, I like to move the object onto the bottom, like so. And then I'll look from the left. Control F to look at my cylinder. Oh, that's not good. Let's go to the right. Control F, there it is. I might go and make the donut invisible just so we can focus on this. So I'll shift this over so that it's directly in the kind of ish in the center of the in the scene here. And then I'll go and use my joint editor to move this manipulator to this position here. I like doing that because otherwise half of our so the replicator will look at the origin point, and if we don't do this, then half of my sprinkle will be sinking into the ground. So I don't really like that. Let's go and grab this tool here, which is the joint editor tool. You can also get the under tools joint editor. And for primitives like this, you'll have two manipulators here, the green one and the red one. And the green one is essentially the position that we need to change. So I'll go and left click and drag that kind of to here, and then to the bottom, and then to the bottom. There we go. And then we'll see how that goes. If I find that if I put it here, then I'll see that most of my particles will be kind of hovering above the icing. So if that is an issue, I can go and play around with that. I'm going to go and put it directly at the bottom. And that's really all we need to do. Change back to the universal manipulator. And then there is our origin point now in the corrector position. So the replicator is going to look at this point when it replicates these particles. I'll go and leave it exactly at this color for now, because it'll be, whoops, click the donut, Control F to zoom in on the donut. And now I'll go and rename this from cylinder to sprinkle 1, in case we have multiple. I'll show you how to do that. So I'll select the sprinkle. This is now the pre-selected thing will be used by the replicator. I'll pick it out under Smart Content with Filter by Context is deselected. Whoops, I'm so sorry. Should have been zoomed out there. So let me do this again. I'll Control F onto my donut here. I'll select my sprinkle. And then I'll go to my Smart Content tab under, I believe, Utilities. Here it is, UltraScatter under Utilities. Double click that, Utilities. There's a PDF guide included with this. We don't need it. I'm going to just use this script here. Double click it, and then it'll look at whatever object was selected. and it'll give me some of these very, very cool options here. So we have 3 tabs: surface, volume, and matrix. And then in each of these, this is the type of replication we want. Surface, this is what we're going to do on the icing. Then volume, we could do it in a 3-dimensional volume. And then we also have a matrix. So this is like it doesn't really have a volume. It just goes and creates like a group of birds in a 3-dimensional matrix in the cloud. So we don't want that. We're just going to use this here, surface. And then we have these tabs here: distribution, scaling, and rotation. First tab here, settings, is using my scatter object sprinkle 1, which was pre-selected over here. Preview instances is fine. Unit centimeters is fine. Import settings, we'll come to that later. Target object is a node onto which I want to put my sprinkle. So in this case, I'm going to go and use my icing, not the donut, the icing. Pick the icing. Then here, number of instances, 20 is, possible. I'm going to say 100, and we'll see what happens. Literally with nothing else selected, I'm going to go and say surface scatter, and we'll see what happens. This might not be the desired outcome. Yeah, so this is obviously not the kind of sprinkler effect where we had hoped for. The particles are a little bit big, and also this is probably not what sprinkles on a donut should look like. So they should still lie on the surface. I do like that. They currently don't do that. They should also be rotated. They should also be smaller. So let's deal with all these things. Thankfully, if we have settings here that we'd like to import back, we can go and just double click the script again with the UltraScatter group, and then it will import all these things that we had made. So it could be something, kind of heavy under distribution, under scaling, under rotation. All these settings will be imported. So my 100 is still here. I'll go and put that maybe to 200. So we want to, have more instances first of all. Then under scaling, let's take care of that. It scales, it has random scaling options, and we can make that happen, or we can just go and say the from and the to scale will be the same. So if I want to make the particles 50% smaller, or like 40% of its original size, I can just say 40 here and 40 there. And this is now going to make my particles smaller. I could also say start at from 30 to 40%, then there'll be a slight size difference between the particles. I might try that, 30 and 40. And hit surface scatter again, see what happens. Smaller particles and more of them. Still not enough. And also that rotation thing is really, that's just not working out, is it? So let's deal with that next. Make them rotate properly. Currently they're all facing the same direction. We don't want to do that. So once again, with the scatter group selected, double click. Head over rotation and say we can rotate them in the Y. So Z and X are probably fine, but in the Y. So we want to rotate them in just like maybe 30% increments, so 30-degree increments. And we want for this to be on the origin point here. That's the other thing you can set. Origin, top, center, or bottom. So I could have set bottom, I guess, but I'm happy with the origin point. See what happens now. Tux, good idea. Hey, Mr. Chris, how's it going? Good to see you, buddy. Still not good. Dang. So rotation hasn't really, I can't really see it being rotated at all. So let's go and have another crack at that. There's also the distribution of where these things are happening. That's not very good. Let me go plus minus 50 here and try that again with the rotation. See what happens now. There we go. That's got it. So they're now certainly scattered more the way I would like them. I don't mind for some of them to dig in here. That's kind of okay for me, but there's still not enough of them. So I'd like for them for there to be more. So let's take care of that. It's really nice that you can just double click and then go back in and say, well, instead of 200, I might like 600, for example. Hit it again. And it might not create exactly 600, but it's trying its best to put as many close to 600 as it can. So as a result, you might see that at the top here, it hasn't created 600, it's made 596. That's as many as it could fit on there. So depending on the parameters, this number might vary. So something else that I don't like is the fact that there's sprinkles everywhere. So they're kind of sticking out here as well. And that's really also not something I like. I might go and just make the donut a slightly different color. So instead of white, let's make it, I don't know, like a dark brown, something like that. So we can, you know, visualize this a little bit better. So ideally what I like is for the sprinkles to stop at one point. So I don't want them to be on the whole surface. I'd like for the shader to have a look at essentially the height of the surface and only put the sprinkles at the very top and stop putting them on the outsides here. And that is also possible with something called the slope value, I believe, and that's under distribution. So there's the elevation, actually it's called elevation here. So I'm gonna have to guess minimum is minus 4,000 and the maximum is 1,000. So minimum is essentially where it begins. 0 would be the absolute center of the ground plane, and we're slightly above that. So if I set this to 0, nothing's gonna change. But if I set this to something else, I'll just say 50 and we'll see what happens. Then we should see like a different way of where the sprinkles will start replicating. So world origin 0, and then anything above it is where we're starting, and then, you know, below it would be a negative value. There's also a fall off and a max fall off, minimum and maximum. I might play with that as well, so that that border between the fall off doesn't look abrupt. It'll look more, you know, it'll kind of thin out there, but we'll then deal with that once we found this value. So I'll say 50. We'll see what happens. This could result in no sprinkles, so I was too high. That makes sense. Let me go a bit lower and I'll try 30. It really depends on the size of your donut and also the height of the object. 30 is also incorrect. Let's go and start with maybe 10. It still hasn't worked. Interesting. Is my theory even correct? If I set this back to 0, I should be back to exactly what it was before. Is that correct? Yes, so there we go. So that was correct. I suppose I'm just very thin here. Let me try 2 and just see if that works. Getting some sprinkles away on the side and on the inside here. No, that wasn't enough. Let me try 5. Had I had a larger, taller donut, these values would be different. We're seeing something. See that? This area here, we're not replicating anything. We're basically starting right here. And it's true for the inside and the outside. So maybe a little bit less, and then also try the fall off, because I can see literally like this very harsh line here. Let me do that. Oop. Yes, you can do that. You can do that. UltraScatter lets you use a height map for that. So, or like a distribution map. The PDF is quite clear on how to do that. I think this is affinity here. This would be image map. This is where you could put that in. So you could draw one. Like when you want to leave a path out, if you want to have a noise map or so forth, you can do that. Distribution. So I like to start a little bit higher, so maybe I'll try 6, and I like to have the fall off maybe 2 and the maximum fall off 3. Let's try that. See what that looks like. Not so bad. Maybe it's a bit too much now. I think there's also too many sprinkles, and they're still a little bit large, so, and maybe they could rotate more. So you can go and have a play with all these values. So let me just fix all of those things. So increment 30, this we're good with 180, I think. And then distribution, fall off here, I say, whoops, I say 1 and 3, and then did I say even less? So we'll go and say 8, and we'll see what happens. And then we'll move on. Yeah, 8 was too much, wasn't it? Let's try 7. Let's try 7. And then we're there. And then I'll show you quickly how to make a different particle that is that has different color. So if we wanted to have essentially the same types of particles again, or the same distribution of the particles again, but maybe we want to have 2 different types of sprinkles, then we could say I'll make the first sprinkle yellow and the second one blue, just so that we can tell them apart. So first sprinkle, since they're instances, if I go and use this, that's all my yellow sprinkles. Does that look good? I'm not sure. I think that doesn't look good. Let's go make them blue instead. There, okay, blue on purple. That's nice. So now let's try our hand at making some of those sprinkles green, or any different color that you like. So for that, we would essentially use a different replicator, and we use a different particle for that. So I'll go and grab my, whoops, grab my sprinkle here, and I'll go and duplicate that. First of all, edit, duplicate, duplicate node. And here we have sprinkle number 2. And everything about it is identical, except for the color. So I'm going to go and make that a different color. Let's say, I don't know, let's say green. Some are blue, some are green. I'll go back to my donut, and the first thing I'll do is I might go, because I'd like for them all to add up to, say, 600. So I'll go back into my original UltraScatter and just halve the amount of instances that have been replicated. So that's at the top here under settings. Instead of 600, I'll say 300. And then nothing else should change. It's just less particles. That's the plan. Oh, were they singing that, Ina? How exciting! Less sprinkles. Now, let me go and select sprinkle number 2 and go for this UltraScatterPro script again. And I'll show you something really cool about this, that if you already have something set up like we have all our parameters. It took us some time to figure this out. We want to use the same parameters on a different particle now. I can go and say import here. Import a scatter, so I don't have to figure this out again. I can just go and import what we already have in our scene, which is this one here, for sprinkle 1, 249 instances. And if I do that, everything will be the same on my second particle, which is awesome. So all I need to do now is hit surface scatter again. And when I say everything is the same, the instances will now be scattered in exactly the same place as well. So it's kind of weird to think about this, but if I go and switch my green particle off, we have the blues and the greens in precisely the same place, because all that random distribution has been calculated off the exact same seeds, and that means the outcome is exactly the same. So what we need to do in order to re-randomize this on our second particle and make them appear in different positions is we need to just change the seeds on the second particle. So let me go do that. I'll double click that script again, and then under distribution here I have this seed value 1000, and it doesn't matter what it is, it just needs to be something different than the previous one. And if I want to go to town, I can do the same under scaling and also under rotation. So those are the seed values. If you're familiar with randomizations, when this number changes, all the subsequent calculations that are based off this seed will also change. So let's go do that. Now we scatter, same values, but the position is going to be different. So there we go, 2 types of sprinkles on our donut. There we go. That's our donut. You can now go ahead and do this again a third time, and then you have a third type of sprinkle. You can also go and add a smoothing modifier to both the donut as well as the icing. You can do that. And I think to finish this all off, let's talk about materials a little bit. Thank you, Tux. Let's save my work. I think that's a very, very good idea. I'll save this as a scene subset again, and I'll just change this into, I'll just oversave that. There. Good point. Blueberry, right? Exactly. We have sprinkles here. We can also put the sprinkles underneath the donut so that it's all neatly in one group. I'll leave them out here for now because there's one thing that we haven't discussed yet, and that's material. So if I go and switch this over into iRay, we may have the surprise that the icing isn't actually flat. The icing is also not pink, even though, you know, that's quite clearly what we have said. This icing looks actually pretty cool because, of course, Materia comes with this snow shader, and, you know, it's an interesting one. It's also a really good donut, so don't dismiss it. This would be a great donut if you'd keep that and just don't have the sprinkles. That would be kind of cool. And so the material that's on the icing has 2 noise layers in it, and you can exchange it with something else, or we can just go and take the noise off. So coconut icing, that's right, Nancy, exactly. So under the surfaces tab with my icing selected, this is the snow shader comes with Materia as well. If you want to know where that is, it's under shaders, as you had expected, and somewhere's in here. Oh, it's in the shader palette. There we go. This is that snow shader. If you want to use it for something else, go ahead and do that. It's a very clever shader. So the cleverness is really that it has these 2 noise channels in here, and they are not in the regular iRay Uber surface shader. So we can either go and change the scale here to 0 on both of those. So if you do that on 1, this looks kind of crazy too. So also a nice donut if you wanted to, you know, change that. Oh yeah, 1 is the minimum value, so we have to go in here under parameter settings and just set the minimum to 0. You can probably also disable it. I've never tried that. Just set that to 0, and then one of the noise channels is disabled, because that as still like a shader looks actually very, very cool. I do dig that. So the second one, I don't think we need to switch it off because it now no longer does anything. I think they work together with one another. So just change noise layer 1 to off. And then also there was, this was pink, but there's also the translucency. So I think I need to change that also to something pink so that it looks more like icing. So it's actually perfect. If you wanted to set it to something a little bit more transparent, you can head over to the geometry's cutout opacity and just put that to 0.8, and then you can 0.8, I said, there we go. Then you can see through the icing a little bit, or you make that even less, like 0.6 or something. And then it's a little bit transparent. You can also use better lighting, of course. It's just the default HDRI here. So that's the icing. And you can see there's a little bit of see-through effect here on the side, so that's neat. So let's have a look at the donut itself. It is currently more or less featureless because it's just, you know, it's just a default material. Oh yeah, also icing, just one thing on the icing. If you wanted to make it more or less glossy, there is also do we have that glossy roughness? If you want to make it more shiny or less shiny, then that's the value to change here. More shiny, less shiny, rougher icing. I think it was kind of nice. The 0.5, the default value, was probably just fine. Donut. That's where our third product of the weekend comes in, and that is, of course, the 41 food shaders by Those Things. And you can make your donut look interesting, like with ground beef or with like a strawberry. Anything goes really, but I think what works best is either this here, like the cake shader, perhaps not banana or pineapple, or for a chocolate donut, this one here, the chocolate cake, that'll work well. This, you can try this for the icing as well. That'll give you sprinkles embedded also a possibility. Soft pretzel might also work. So these are marvelous because you can just drag them on to the donut and see what it looks like. I might go and use fried batter perhaps, or waffle also. Bread, how about that? Bread, make it a little bit darker. Chocolate chip cookie, any of these things will work really well. So thank you, those things. Very good offer. Very, very good offer. Let me go and choose my surface selection tool and just go and select my donut here. And then that has that default surface. Under presets, shaders, iRay, food, I have them all at my disposal in multiple resolutions. So like this bread here, bread in 2K, bread in 4K. Maybe fried batter in 2K, that should be enough. I'll double click it and then I'll see that my surface changes. That's also bread. Does that work? Right, maybe fried batter. That's kind of what we have here, isn't it? Fried batter. It doesn't look perfect yet because it doesn't quite match up with the UVs, my default UVs from my donut dough. So if I go back into the editor here under geometry, I can just change the tiling around. So geometry tiling, the default is set to 3 and 3, but if we go and set that to something, let me go do this in filament so I have an immediate feedback here. If I go and increase that horizontal tiles, to something, maybe we'll try 25 this way, and then vertically we'll also increase that 10, maybe 12, something like that. That from afar might pass as donut material. But you can try any of the others. You can try a higher density scaling, or tiling rather. Set this to 25 and this to 50. You can see the repetitions coming in there, so I'm thinking maybe this is neat. If you needed for this to be darker, head over to the diffuse channel, and instead of making this white here with the texture on it, you just make that a little bit darker. Or if you don't want to give it a gray, you can also add another color into it, so make that kind of a tanned chocolatey donut thing. So endless variation, and this is still too highly saturated here. This donut is crispy. So anything your heart desires you can do with this, and yes, keep making these donuts. Keep making 5, 10, 20 and send them over, post them on social media and show us your best donuts. Put some funky lighting on it, put some good camera effects on it, and we will select the best donut. So hashtag it with #DazDonut. It'll be great to see all your submissions, and it'd be nice to see what the community comes up with. Also, if you have other ideas of how to change the donut, be my guest. So in our second donut, I might not go through the whole thing again, but I could show you how you could change the shape of the particle, for example, or the shape of the donut. Cheesecake donut. I love it, yes. To the Quickie Mart chat, let's do that. Very nice. So hey, that's not bad for about an hour's worth of work. That is not bad, I've got to say. I'm just having a quick look at your questions here, just in case I can answer some of them while we have this donut in here, and then we can see what else we can do to this donut. I might just show you this on this donut here. The box made from the David Hall's comment I'm just reading out, for the box made from the stretched cube prisms with some sides removed in the geometry editor. Almost, actually, this is the box you're talking about, right? They're almost like that. It's one of those things. I'll show you in a minute how to do this in Blender. Linus wants to know, does the thickness only work on primitives, or will it also work on more complex designs? The push modifier. Linus, absolutely, it does. I've had I've just recorded a video about this for my Daz masterclass, and it's something that Chris actually brought to my attention. Thanks, Chris, by the way, for doing that. I had another one of Alessandro's products, which was the anthropomorphic hippo, and I gave him a fairly tight-fitting shirt, but because the shirt was so tight, the hippo poked through everywhere, and Defrost didn't seem to figure it out. The outfit that I was using didn't have an expand all modifier, but the push modifier did do it, and it's a fairly complex outfit. So yes, it also works on more complex shapes. Yes, not just on primitives. It's just that on more complex ones, so it'll basically do this along the side of the normals everywhere, and if normals intersect with one another, they might be pushing into one another. So it's just one of those artifacts to be aware of, but you can also go and just, you know, work around that in ZBrush after that. Thank you for asking. Yoshi wants to know, what's the difference between saving a scene or a sub-scene in Daz Studio? Very good point. If you head over here to say save as scene, then everything that's currently in your scene, as well as all the settings about your scene, will be saved. So in my case, I would be saving the filament draw options node, my donut, my icing, the sprinkles, the tone mapper options, as well as the environment options, as well as anything I have set up under render settings. And that is the best way to save something if you just want to, you know, save it all and come back to it later. If you wanted to bring something, if you want to prepare something like a character with clothing and just want to pose him or her and save them just by itself without the render settings or without any other objects that you have in your scene, then you should use a sub-scene, because it's only a portion of that. So the reason for that would be that if you have a master scene that is maybe, you know, scene made up of a house and 3 people, each of your people could be saved out as a sub-scene, and they would only contain the character and the outfit and the pose. And then you can just go and import that, merge it into the master scene that then has render settings that would otherwise be overwritten potentially. So if you have, you can merge regular scenes as well, but if you do that and you have render setting A and you merge it into a second scene with render setting B, then render setting A will overwrite that. Or if you had something like a camera in your scene, those cameras will be added, so you'd have multiple cameras, and often that is not what you want. So that's why I like the sub-scene workflow. Tim Dehaney Adams, this is a completely unrelated question, more than welcome. Does anyone know if the TG4 Essentials pack contains the TG4 expressions? Doesn't say on the Daz store page, but I can't find them separately. That's the tune generations, right? Essentials, shall we have a look? I don't remember is the honest answer. I do remember buying them, but I don't remember. That is what you mean, right? The tune generations. Tune generations essentials. Hair essentials. I don't think it does. I think the essentials, that's the clothing. I think that's what that does. That is just the clothing, the essentials. I seem to remember. I bought this here. I bought the bundle. I bought the other ones as well. There's Tune Generations and Tune Generations 4. There's a little bit of a confusion about that. But yeah, this is... I think this is only the morph. Actually, it's the morph, isn't it? Is that not the clothing as well? Maybe it isn't. It's got eyes. It's got... I don't see any expressions. I don't see him. Got the head and face shapes, but I don't see expressions. Whereas on the Mega Bundle, what might contain the expressions then? Quick questions. If Steve would be here, he could tell us. I'm hoping that Steve can be my guest on the show at some point in the future. We have discussed it. He is open to the idea. That's the hair. That's the clothing. So yeah, essentials is just the figures, I guess. I don't know if these actually come with expressions, to be honest. I don't recall particular expressions on this product, even in the Mega Bundle. That's what I remember. Schwarzwälder Kirsch. I remember that, Dominic. Welcome to the stream. Wouldn't that be cool to make one of those? Wouldn't that be cool? Wallace says, could you make these sprinkles as a mesh, the same shape as the original sugar coating, and drop them onto the sugar coating? I'm not sure what you mean. I can make them sink in more by changing the position of the origin point. So if you move the origin point up a little, the particles will sink in more. That is something we could try just while we're here, because it's one of those things that is that's actually a nice idea. Let me go and put the sprinkle here, as I showed you before with the joint editor. If I go and put this guy just slightly up into the particle, so we're just looking at the blue particles. If I do that, I go back to my donut, and nothing should have changed because we haven't re-scattered it. Let's do that. The blue ones should now sink in more into the dough. That's something you can do with that under utilities, I believe. UltraScatter. And if we just go and rescatter just the blue particles, they should now go and sink in a little bit more. These appear to hover. Don't be fooled by that. The green ones, they seem to hover. That's not the case. Oh, there we go. So they are now sunken in a little bit more. Yeah, so these are not hovering. The icing is actually going up. It's because filament and transparency, they sometimes don't get on so well. You have to look hard here. There's one other thing I wanted to show you. If you don't like going down the Hexagon route, if you just think, hey, that's just another program that I don't have the headspace for, I don't really know how to work it out, there's another product that I wanted to bring to your attention, and you may have heard of it, you may not have. It's called MeshGrabber by the man Friday, and it's a bit like what's it called? Deformers on steroids. So this is also something you can use to change geometry inside of Daz Studio. Let me go and make the icing invisible here and the sprinkles, and we're just left with this nicely covered donut here. Let me go into the wire texture shaded mode, and I'll just show you briefly how that works and how you can change geometry that you don't have to send over to Hexagon. So just in case you want to do that, it's a different workflow. It costs money. Hexagon is free. The MeshGrabber costs money, and we'll discuss how the product is structured. I have it installed here. It's this little hand icon, and it is also available under Tools, MeshGrabber. So it works similar, but with many limitations of Hexagon, but it's entirely integrated into Daz Studio. So let's have a look. If I click this, then seemingly nothing seems to happen. Make sure you have the tool settings tab open. So this is what you need for that. And then this is actually a good idea to have that open at all times, or at least accessible at all times. So we have MeshGrabber here, and we can change what we want to select. Do we want to select a face, an edge, or a vertex on the object that is selected? So I might go and select the face here, and as I hover over my donut here, I can go and click a face, and then this sphere appears. And this sphere is the area of influence. So I can do this on the fly. Wherever I click, this is where that sphere is going to appear. The sphere can be made bigger or smaller, and you can also change the location of where that manipulator is pointing, a bit like what we had in Hexagon. So there's here gizmo orientation. This is where that is. World, node, or normal. There's also camera oriented, but let me go. World is basically not changing no matter what I pick. the manipulator is not changing. And then if we go and say node, oh sorry, if we say normal, then we look at the surface orientation of the normal, and that's either pointing towards me or towards, you know, the sky, or towards in or whatnot. So that's how that works. So use that. Then you have the fall off radius here. That is how big or small that sphere is. So I make that slightly smaller and go and grab my manipulator here, left click and drag out. You can see that I can make changes to the donut or to the icing. So you could just change the icing this way as well. The bigger the sphere is, the more of a soft selection you have. So that is also a way to make your donuts, misshape it a little bit. This could probably do with a little bit of a larger one. You can use the plus sign here as well. And you can go and misshape the donut. So maybe it wasn't quite round, you know, maybe it was a bit mangled, who knows. This will require for the surface to be recalculated, of course. So just as an example, you can make these changes to geometry inside Daz Studio as well, within limitations. So you can also rotate it if you wanted to, you know, really mess up the donut. That's possible. Rotationally, that's possible. And you have several fall off types here, and you can have, you know, more or less gain. So this is something you can also do. So MeshGrabber is a cool tool, especially for those who don't want to use the you know, creating a morph from it with an external application. If that is something that you don't want to deal with, or something you don't grasp or you don't have time for, then you can use MeshGrabber for that. It's a little scary though, looking at the MeshGrabber product, because I remember when I've seen it the first time, I thought, which thing do I need now? And it comes as a bundle for Windows, and there's another bundle for Mac. And these are the ones that I recommend you buy. So it started off really with a single product for Windows and a single product for Mac. Coding is different, and that literally let you just change the geometry. Then Man Friday added a rotational add-on to both Mac and Windows to that, and then he added an add-on that lets you save your changes as a morph target to both the Mac and the Windows version. So those were 6 products, and we have those 3 products together for Mac and Windows as a bundle. So that's why we have 8 types of MeshGrabber products, and that's basically the reason. And with all of them together, you're basically covered. So if you're thinking of picking one up, Brian's going to post that link in the chat, and that is how you can make little squishy changes to the dough, and you know, you can just go and shape it around. Yeah, that is how we can do that. So we have about half an hour, and I have a feeling that if I go and make a donut box, that might take me a little longer than just half an hour. What are we thinking here? Should I try to do that anyway and rush talk you through this? How to create a donut box and rig it up in Daz Studio? Because that's another one of those things that is a tricky subject, but you know, I'm happy to talk you through it if you're happy. Oh, you bought the wrong bundle, Wallace. Oh, ouch. Right, yes, that's why I thought, you know, if you buy the Mac or the Windows bundle for whichever operating system you're using, that has everything you need. So, yeah, those are the bundles, are the ones that I would recommend. Take a bite out of it. Wow, that's going to be tricky, but you can probably make it happen. For a real bite, you may have to increase the geometry of the donut and then model it, or you need to have another object to literally take a chunk out of it. That is also possible, but I don't think I know how to do that. Chris might know how to do that. So if I were to try that, I would probably bring this into Blender, my misshapen donut here, on which now my icing isn't going to fit anymore. See that? Totally doesn't fit unless I redistort the icing, which I could also try, you know. Let me go try that with MeshGrabber. Yeah, there we go. Misshapen donut. So this is what these things are really cool for, both Hexagon and MeshGrabber. You just have a little bit of poke through. You just go, hey, no problem. You just go click, drag, and then yeah, that's the end of it. Perfect. Icing has been adjusted. Now we just need to re-sprinkle the sprinkles. They might now be they might be kind of sunken into the dough. So we just recalculated, because here this is, you know, these are now sunken in, but no matter. Let's go re-scatter that. This one and that one. Oh, can it, David? That's exciting. I'm totally going to have a look at that. What's it called? Do you know what it's called? Just describe it. I'm sure I'm going to find it. So, what shall we do? Would you like to know more about this process, or are we doing the donut box? You decide. Ayub, thank you so much. Also, congrats on your tick on the YouTube tick. That is great. Gotta say. So, right, if you wanted to make variations of this donut now, you can go and let me go and take the sprinkles and drag them down into my donut. If we wanted to make variations, you would just go and create copies of it. So maybe this one is the one with, you know, with the icing. So select the donut, head over to Edit, Duplicate node hierarchies, and then we have donut v1 2. So I'll go and call this one donut v2. All its hierarchies have been preserved, so including the icing and its very own set of sprinkles. So move that over here. Whoops. Where's the icing? Why is the icing not moving? I don't know what happened. We need to recalculate the icing then. Now, that didn't happen in my earlier tests. The icing was just duplicated with it. That I've not seen before. What happened here? Let's try that again. It wasn't the particles, was it? Take the sprinkles out just in case. Edit, duplicate, node hierarchies. And then we have this. No way! What happened to the icing? I don't know what happened. I didn't have to, in my earlier tests, I didn't have to recalculate that. Could be a mesh grabber thing. That is possible. Let me go load my scene in again. That it could be that. That's crazy. GuestCon. Okay, cool. I'm going to totally have a look at that. Thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. There's so many products that I don't know. Donut. Which one was it? Oh, it's not actually open. I meant to merge it into my scene here. Daz scene's donut v1. See if we can get it duplicated. Because I don't recall there being an issue with that before. That's a little bit strong. Let me go and put a filament draw options node in here and then turn down the sunlight just a tiny amount. Like so. So with donut selected, edit, duplicate node hierarchies. This one will just be the top node. This is all the nodes. And then with donut v2 selected, let's go and, yeah, there we go. That's what I remember. That is what I remember. Yeah, it could have been mesh grabber. I don't know what it was. So now we can go and make our icing a different color. So maybe it's no longer pink. Maybe now it's blueberry. And so forth. And also we can go and, when we put them in the box, you probably want to go and kind of rotate it like so. Let's go make more. Edit, duplicate, node hierarchies. Donut 3. Can go over here. Maybe that one has yellow icing. So once again, a little bit of rotation going on here. That's how you can make a full plate of donuts and then put them on top of one another and just have a ton of fun building these things. I would love it if you could go and put them on social media and tag hashtag Daz Donut. This might be, yeah, this one is maybe key lime donut. There. That is more like the toxic key lime. Maybe it's more like lemon. Lemon. Much better. And then you can, you know, you can duplicate the sprinkles and change the color of the sprinkles and anything that you like. I just think this is just such a cool project to have fun with. It'll crash? Oh, how interesting. Could it be a memory thing in your case then, Yoshi? Is that possible? Let's see if we can go get this box done. See, we have half an hour. Maybe I can do that. Maybe I can do that. I might not be able to make the materials for it, but I can certainly show you how to... I'll save this as a whole scene. I can certainly show you how to create two types of cubes and put them together so that you can go and rig them up in Daz Studio. Let's do that. I'll call this the donut collection. And we're saving this as a whole scene. Okay, donut box coming right up. Hexagon, I don't think we need anymore. But yeah, have a look at it. If you're not quite familiar with it, don't worry about learning the whole program. It's literally just about learning how you export something, how you can make a change, how you can send it back for free. And, you know, do that time and time again. It'll save you so much work. And I had this question recently that was, hey, why do you use Hexagon and not ZBrush for that? And in case you're wondering that as well, those are very different tools. So in ZBrush, we have fantastic sculpting tools, but in Hexagon we have these vertex tools. So some are better there, some tools are much better in ZBrush, but other tools are just much faster and quicker in Hexagon. Let's start with the default cube. So this is in Blender now, just for the box, because I'm more familiar with modeling in Blender. RTX 2080 shouldn't really crash that, I gotta say. And 32 gigs of RAM, that should be okay. Don't really know what to make of it. Faulty RAM? Thank you, Ryukin. I appreciate that. This was, I think, from a Windows Insider preview. All types of versions of Windows. And this was before 11 was released. So this is, you know, 3.1. Then this is kind of the 7 era. This is what we have today. And this is, I think they planned that for Windows 11, but I think they got away with that design. They threw it away. Hey, quick donut box, let's do this thing. I'm going to make sure the default cube plays a starring role. I'll go and move it up. I'm going to go by Blender units here, and I'm going to go and move it up. It's 2 by 2 units, so I'll say GZ1 and put that on the bottom here. Then I'm going to make sure that its origin point here is at the very bottom, and that happens, I believe, here. Set origin to 3D cursor. There we go. As a result, if I go and scale this guy, it scales from the bottom. And that's exactly what I want. I'm going to scale it in the Y direction. So SY for scaling. I'm going to make it so that 6 donuts fit in it. 3 at the top and 3 at the bottom. If we say one donut is like one of these squares on the bottom, then I'll say this is like 1, 2, and 3 donuts wide now. And 2 donuts is... What's the plural of donut? Donuts. 2 high and 3 wide. Then we'll say S and Z to bring that down a bit and turn it into the donut box we love. There we go, like that. Getting there. Because I've changed the scale of this object, I'm going to go and apply that, Control A, and I'll say all transforms. This will now not cause me issues as I go into edit mode. So in edit mode, by hitting tab, I'm going to go and select my faces here, and I'm going to show you... I don't want to take this away. I could do that with X and then just take the face away. That would be the box already, but the problem with this approach is that we now have normals facing outside and the inside, well, they're not normal, so they are just the reverse normal, so that's not a good approach. So what I'll do instead is I'll hit E to extrude this and hit enter straight away afterwards. And then I'll just go and bring this face down, so GZ, so that we essentially create more geometry here, and then I'll go and scale this in just a tiny amount, like so. It's not very elegant, but now we have normals all the way, and that's kind of what we want. And that's part one of the puzzle. That's my bottom box. I need the same thing essentially now, and turn it upside down, remove one face and attach it to this thing at the back here. I think I might, before I do that, I might just go, while I have it in object mode, I'll select all of these things and then head over here and use some vertex groups. So vertex groups are something that Daz Studio will use for rigging. It will look at this and say, this is one part for one bone. And then we'll have another vertex group and it'll say, well, this is another part for another bone. So I'm going to call this the box. And I will go and assign all these faces to that vertex group. So these are different to the material groups. Just to see if it works. Can I select that? Yeah, perfect. Great. That is all we need here. So I'm coming out of edit mode. I'm going to duplicate that with, I think, Shift D. And then I'll go and R180 that. Whoops. No, that's not what I meant. RX180. That's RX180. Yeah, that'll work. And now I have a lid for this. And I'll go and say GX that along this way. GZ that up to kind of here. No, that's not correct, is it? That's not quite correct. That's the lid I'm looking for. Yeah, so it'll attach here. And then close down. And since it's the lid, it also needs to be a little bit bigger than the box, but we'll deal with that in a second. I think just S, make that just slightly larger. I should have really checked, does it fit on it to begin with, but I guess I didn't do that. I'm not a very good Blender modeler, I gotta be brutally honest, but this is gonna work fine. This is going to work fine for what we're doing. Let me go into edit mode here and just remove these two faces. So this one and shift select that one. And then we go X and take the faces away. So now we have that box. Just to simulate how the lid's gonna come down, let me go and put the origin point, or let me put the 3D cursor here to the center of that. Yeah, I have to search for where that is. Origin, no, sorry, cursor to selected. That's the one. And now if I go and select all these faces and make sure they rotate around the 3D cursor, and then I go R and Y, then this is the effect that I'd like in Daz Studio. It's kind of, oh come on, it kind of fits, and then it'll stop there somehow. Yeah, it's gonna work. It's gonna work. Trust me. I'm gonna go and make a new vertex group just for the lid. So because I've copied everything, the lid now has the same vertex group as before. It was literally the box. So I'll go and make a new one that I will call lid, and I will go and assign all these faces to it. Does it work? Yes, it does work. Do you know what? There's one other thing that I'd like to do, just so that we can model that in later. I think I'd like the window at the top here. So that would be a little cutout here that I can just select or assign different materials to if I wanted to. So Control R, put a few loop cuts in here. Like so. And then if I wanted to, I can select these here. and then the ones on the outside, and turn them into material that'll be then the window, like that. So we haven't actually talked about the materials yet, but they would be here, and this would be like the window, I suppose. And actually, let me create another one. There's box outer, box inner. We need quite a few materials here, but this is how I'll do it, just to get that window in there. And then with window, I'd say assign. Does that work? Select. No, it hasn't worked, does it? Dang, brother, that's gold. It's probably because of that. So assign all that to here, and then window. We go select. Nothing's there. Perfect. That's one of those things. Select again. A window. Assign that. Assign. Select window. I like it. And this one's currently the box outer. It's also not quite correct because we need another one. We need box inner as well. But you know, materials, I might just not do that. I might go and focus on rigging this thing up. We also need to put these two things together here. So select both of these, Control J to join these two things together. And now this is all one thing. Let's do materials while we're here. Let's do that. So box outer is really all this, isn't it? Box outer assign, and then we go and have another one which is box inner. If that makes sense. Box inner could be this. Just so that the outside could have green sprinkles and all green little dots. Assign. Does it work? Select. Ah, I see. This is the lit stuffs has gone away now. Another material zone that has been destroyed. Okay, that needs to be the window, dude. So window needs to be this and that. That's the window. What was the previous window then? Why is that the window? That's not what I did. Except the window. Sean, this is terrible. I might just go and rename it because this is actually a good material zone. It just doesn't have the right name. What else has gone wrong then here? Select that. That's kind of the box outer. I give you that. Except for the inner parts, which is, you know, there should be one that's called lit inner, shouldn't it? Let's do that. Blender's driving me insane sometimes. Lit inner, let me just do that. And lit inner is just this, isn't it? As well as kind of this here. Probably easy to just select all this. I'm sure there's a perfectly healthy explanation for this. And materials is one thing that I would love, ding, assign, one day to just understand at least, you know. Select yes, that's good. So what we got here then? Window, that's the window. Perfect. What's the first window thing then? That is, whoops. That's kind of the, okay, fine. The box outer is that. Box inner, oh, box inner isn't anything. So we'll go this. Let's go put that, assign that to box inner. Then window is nothing, right? Yeah, perfect. Then we can just go and take window and get rid of that. Groovy. Doesn't really work. I'm okay with that. I'm totally fine with that. We're good here. We're good here. This is all we need, really. All I want to do now is make sure we give that box the correct origin point. And oh, check the vertex groups as well. So we have the lid and the box. Let's check it out. Lid is all that, perfect. And then the box is all that. So just to be clear, the materials are not the vertex groups. There's different types of selections, and this is needed for rigging, and the materials, they're needed to put, well, materials on the object. So we need both of those things. Just before we do this, we also need to UV map the object, of course. So let's just do that automatically. UV, smart UV project. I'm good with this. One other thing before I export it is just the origin point of the object. I'd like for that to be at the bottom here, not at the lid. That's what I like. So cursor to world origin, like so. And then up here under object, we set origin to 3D cursor. Ding, perfect. Okay. I will save this, because, you know, we can rig this in 15 minutes. That's cool. We can do that. On my desktop, there's the donut stream. In it, I will have the blend files. In my blend files, I've got the donut box. All right. Very good. Yes, very good. Scale. I'm going to go, before I export that, there's also, I'll call it donut box here. And now we'll go and export this as an OBJ. New folder for the OBJs, just so that we're totally organized. Donut box is good. This is what often falls apart. So first of all, the scale, I'm going to set that to 100. So just so that it's, you know, large enough. There's this 100% discrepancy between Blender and Daz Studio. Selected only, because I don't want to do the camera and the lights. And very important, under grouping, I want to use my vertex groups and I want to use my material groups. Those are the things I'd like to export. And if I don't do that, then I won't be able to rig this with the figure setup tool. Let's see if it works. Have I forgotten anything? The crab is, isn't he, David? He's totally obsessed, I tell you. This scene is saved. Let's go back to Daz Studio, create myself a new scene. And let's use the figure setup tool. So this is something that you might not need every day, but it's kind of a handy tool to know about. If I were to go and import my donut box as it is, then we'll see that it works. Let's just see if it is kind of the right. Yeah, it's kind of a good size here. I like it. Wire texture shaded. There we go. It does work, but it's not a figure I can rig. So it's a static object. I can move it around, but the lid I can't really do anything with because it's part of that object. I'm thinking, yeah, look at that. My surfaces are all intact. But I can't move it. I mean, I can probably add a bone manually, but the figure setup tool is kind of easier for handling this task. So let me go and delete that and open that up. I don't have it docked, so it's under Window, Panes, and Figure Setup. It's a little bit of a scary one, but bear with me. It makes sense. We've got these two sections here, the left one and the right one. On the left one, I'll go and right click in it and say add geometry. And that is how I import my object. And here, that's the OBJ that I've just made. Let's go bring that in. Same scale as before, so regular import dialog. And here it is. Nothing's in the viewport yet. On here, I can see that these are now my face groups, the ones that I've set up in Blender as vertex groups. Those are now my face groups here in Daz Studio. And those are important. So I can go and drag this whole thing here, my donut box, over to here where it says geometry. So left click and drag that over there and let it drop. That's that. we've got the label thing here. It's called Donut Box 113 now. Let's go and rename that. Edit name just so that it looks a little bit neater. Whoops, box. And then here the label as well. Edit label, Donut Box. And now we can see that these two things are ready to be dragged into their own hierarchy. So we want the box to be at the bottom and the lid to be essentially like a child of the box. So you can go and select the lid, not this thing here, but this lid bone here with the bone icon. Left click and drag that over and on top of the box. Over and on top of the box. There we go. And that creates this parent-child hierarchy here. So that's neat. So this will give us literally one bone, and that's the bone that we're interested in. And this here on the bone order, if you go and select both of these and right click, you can change the bone order. And in my case, so it doesn't matter all that much. It's just the way the bone is pointing, and you can change that afterwards. It's just a good habit, I guess, to get into that. Y is up, so my bone rotation isn't going to start with Y. That's kind of the main axis. It's not going to start with Y. It could be X, it could be Z. I'm gonna err on the side of caution with Z. I believe Z is probably the depth. If I'm looking at the box, then left and right is X, back and forth is Z, and up and down is Y. So I'm thinking it's either going to be ZXY or ZYX. I'm going to say ZXY and see what happens. Last thing, important, select weight maps, and that's just so that Daz Studio can understand that it has maps that it can describe to the skeleton what part of the geometry needs to be moved. So we'll use the default ones except for scale. So that's like twist axis, least likely, and the most likely to reach 90 degrees. That'll be fine. We hit accept, we hit create, and now check it out. My donut box comes back into my viewport, at which point I don't really need the figure setup tab anymore if I've done everything correctly, which we'll figure out, shall we? But I'll go and close it for now. And here's my donut box. So it now has this hierarchy here, box and lid, and it is the lid that I'd like to lift here. If I select that, and I can see where the origin point of these bones is, so I might have made a mistake, but we'll see how it goes. So with the lid selected, let me go and go over to my bone editor, to my joint editor tool, and see, alrighty, so I've made a mistake here. This is really not where the bone should have been. So probably would have preferred the X at the beginning. I don't think the Y, but maybe the X. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. We can go delete this and literally go and do this again. It's one thing that I haven't been able to figure out when to know what to use. So bone rotation here, I'm just going to go and say X, Y, Z and create the geometry again. See what happens to the bone now. Lid, there we go. That's where I'd like the bone to point. It's not quite in the right position, but it's generally the way that I'd like to point this thing. So now I'm good. Now I'm good. Oops. Oh no. What did you do? Close this. There. All I need to do now is with the bone, I'd like for it to be flush with the lid. So if I go and move this guy down, the green little guy here, on the lid, not on the box, to here, as good as you can. Then also the red guy here. That's that. And then there's one other step that we need to use, and that is on the weight map tool. So currently, if you use the rotational thing, you can go, if I have a look at the bend, I can see that something is moving, but my lid isn't exactly opening or closing. I can see that, you know, something is trying to do it, but we need to associate the bones with the geometry, and we haven't done that yet. And I believe that is happening with the weight node brush tool. Is that right? No, also with the bone tool. With right click. Is that right? Edit. We're looking for what are we looking for? We're looking for, actually, with the Node weight brush tool. Isn't that right? Oh, I don't remember. We're looking for an option called fill bone geometry, something along those lines. And I forgot where that is. I think maybe I need to select the donut box here. Is that right? Edit. Transfer line snap. That is not what I mean. I forgot. Thankfully, I've written it down. Oh, zoom out. Oh, man. Sorry. Thank you for shouting. Hey, thank you so much for telling me. Do we need to do all this process again? Have you missed a lot? Because that would be terrible. How long was I zoomed in? I so engrossed in this thing that I may have lost out. I may have lost out on. You may have lost out on valuable information. Shall we do this again? I mean, what have you missed? Do let me know. Dang. I'm so sorry. Sometimes I'm trying to be helpful. 2 minutes. Okay, let me go. Since I was tapping in the dark anyway, let me go and go back to the figure setup tab. Dude, where are you? Figure setup tab, which has kind of, yeah, there we go. It still remembers all the settings. So I've just changed the bone rotation here to something X, Y, Z. And I've also selected the weight maps that we need. At least that's what I thought I should do. Anything except for scale. So that's what I did. Loaded this geometry in, add geometry. Then I right click this from here over to there. Then I dragged the lid onto the box. Then I changed this, well, I tried to change it. I think XYZ is probably correct. And then I'll go and select the weight maps and, you know, use the default parameters except for scale. And that's all we do here. Then we go and hit create. And then we don't need the figure setup tool anymore, because now we have a box, which is awesome, which now has that hierarchy, the top level thing. Then we have the box itself, and then we have the lid. And that's the one thing we do actually want to make movable. Okay, I just, you know, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. So if I go and change my tool over to my joint rotation tool, I can see my bones now, both for the box and for the lid. We're only concerned with the lid. And all I need to do here is I want to make sure the bone lies flat in the lid. So I might go and just look from the front. Or the back, doesn't really matter. And I'll go and grab this little green guy and put him down, just so that this guy is where this geometry is going to move later. I'll move this over to here. And this is our one bone that we need. So the one thing that I couldn't quite remember is that we need to associate the bone with the weight map group. And, you know, for the life of me, I cannot remember where that is. I thought we're going to right click and head over to edit, but that might also be incorrect. So it might be under the weight map tool here. That's this one, isn't it? Node weight brush tool. And in here, isn't there a thing? Isn't there a thing? Weight editing. Fill by bone selection groups. That's what I was looking for. I'm so sorry. So yeah, this is what we need to do, right? So before the bone can move the geometry, we go to that node weight brush tool. We right click anywhere. We go to weight editing and check fill by bone selection groups. And that should do that. Now I believe when we go back to my regular rotation tool, any of these tools, we should see that the lid is actually moving. The fact that it's not, the fact that it's not moving right now while I'm doing it, that appears to be a bug inside Daz Studio, that the only way I know how to get rid of it is to save your scene and bring it in again. So I might just go and do that. just as a full scene. I'll call it donut box. And I'll literally just go and reload that scene. Don't ask me why that is. But as soon as we do that and grab the lid, this can now be moved like I want it to. So currently this moves any which way, and this is not how we want the donut box to open or close. So we want to go and put some limits on this. I'm going to use the universal manipulator for that. And we'll say the lid right now, under rotation, that's the bend value. That's the one that we want to change. So I'm thinking minus 180 is totally closed. I like that. But then really the open value, I'm thinking maybe that's as open as I want to make it. Maybe like, you know, plus 20 here. Let's do that, plus 20. So minus 180 to plus 120. So on the bend value, let's go and change that to not so much Z rotate. I can leave that. I'm going to change the label into box open or lid open. And now it says lid open, which is groovy. And I will remember to zoom out, I'm telling you. Minimum minus 180, maximum say 20. Let's do that. Perfect. Now we can do that. That's groovy. So the other two values, twist and side by side, I can just hide and then we don't have to see them. If I put that to hidden, then they go away. And then ordinary users who haven't got the show hidden parameters enabled, they will only see that we can now open the lid. Ta-da! Perfect. Now we have the donut box. Now that we have that, let me go and save that. Save the donut box out as a sub-scene. And then I'll put that into the donut collection. I'll just say donut box. That's cool. Donut box. Overwrite just the box. Because it ain't rocket science. I ate all the donuts. Jeff, we need to put the donuts back in the box. And we can totally do that. Let's go donut collection. That was our master scene, I say. There they all are. Our box might be a little bit too big. Let's see how we can do it. File, merge into scene. I'll say the donut box. So now my render settings and whatnot are not overridden, which is neat. Oh, donut box is massive or the donuts are small. I don't know yet. We make donut box small and rotate it around as well. Minus 90. And donut box is a little bit bright, isn't it? Do I need sunglasses here? Just make it a tad darker. There we go. And this might also be a bit too shiny. It's paper after all. The donuts are sticking through the ground, so we might want to fix that. But let's go and make the donut box the correct size so that yeah, that'll work. He can go here. This guy goes over here. There's another trick. If you have issues while you're selecting these things, you can always go and make sure that the icing is unselected. That's this little arrow icon here. That and also the sprinkles, you will probably want to make that unselected so that when you select this, no matter where you click, you're always selecting the donut rather than, you know, just the icing and accidentally move that out of the way. You probably don't want to do that. There we go. that, and then we have the other donut. Donut number 3, there he goes. And now we can make 3 more. Maybe this one here. Duplicate node hierarchies. Put this down here. Maybe on him, on this donut, I might go and switch off the particles so that he only has the glaze, and maybe one more. Have this donut here. Duplicate hierarchies, put him over here. Turn him around a little bit, maybe also go put you into the corner. I'll just have 5, I don't mind. Maybe you also don't have sprinkles. There. Donut box! Fantastic. That is all I have. One plane, we can do that, Maybe the icing here is also, not there. There, that's it. And since they have individual materials, you can also go and put something else on it. We can try one of the other food shaders here. Oops. No, not here. This, then that. Eye-ray. Filter by context. No, don't do that. Eye-ray. And then don't we have food here somewhere? Oh, that's materials. No, don't do that. Shaders. That's what we need to be. Eye-ray. And then we have food here. And perhaps, it could be the waffle donut. That might not be bad. Or a cruller. Something like, chocolate chip. Also cool. Also not bad. Also not bad. I think maybe the chocolate cake, that looks particularly yummy. I think the only thing is all the donuts are now poking through the box. So the easiest way to do that is, of course, to put the donut box slightly lower. There. Perfect. The final credit. Let's give the lid a glass shader here. There. Lid. If we wanted, we can make just a green dot or something and then put that as the material on the box on the outside. You can eye-ray decal a logo on it and all kinds of other funky stuff. Crab food! Okay, guys, I think that is all I have for today. I'm going to have a quick, thank you, Brian, I appreciate that. I'm going to have another quick look at your questions and see if there's anything else that we should be discussing. Looks good enough to eat. Thank you, Jocelyn. I appreciate that. Very nice. I think that's pretty much all we have. If there's anything else, do ask away. Otherwise, I'm going to say good night and goodbye. Don't forget to hashtag the Daz Donut on social media, and I'm going to go and post this as a little picture. I might put some lights in there. It's going to take me half an hour or so, and I'm going to go do that, post it there, and then I'll hashtag it with Daz Donut as well. It was wonderful to see you. I'm going to go and put some chapter points in the description so that you can fast track into the sections that you want to rewatch and give it your best shot. It is really a wonderful exercise to do this over and over again and think outside the box and see what other crazy materials you can apply to both the icing and the donuts and see what sprinkles you can make. Sprinkles, we haven't talked about it, that you can change the shape of the sprinkles either in Hexagon or with Mesh Grabber as well. One of those things. Do whatever floats your boat, and if you have any questions, then do leave them below in the comments and I will try my best to answer them. Thank you so much for watching, and those of you who've forgone the Eurovision Song Contest, thank you so much. And anyone else who was here, it was just a pleasure for you guys to be here. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time with the Daz Plus stream. I'll also be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on my own channel. I hope I'll see you on any of these occasions. Have a wonderful night. Take care. Bye-bye.